So here we are, your very first HSC Biology inquiry question. So the first dot point is on reproduction, and the inquiry question is, how does reproduction ensure the continuity of a species? Here we are. So in this first dot point, we have to look at different methods of reproduction. Sorry about that. We have to look at different methods of reproduction, and we also have to look at external and internal fertilization. So methods of reproduction, right? So gametes are produced by parents. So gametes are the sex cells that are produced by the parents through meiosis. We will understand in just 1 second what this process of meiosis is and how it exactly functions. But meiosis is the way in which these gametes, these specific cells are produced. The sex cells are produced through meiosis. Now, each gamete will contain half the necessary number of chromosomes. So what happens is, in your normal body cells, everyone has in your normal body cells, we have normal healthy normal healthy people have 46 chromosomes in normal body cells. Now we will talk about mutations and stuff, and how unfortunately they can happen, and they can affect chromosome numbers, and how they can affect the basically the DNA and the genome, and what effects that can then have, and the diseases it can cause, and the conditions it can cause. We do actually also talk about that, but that's not in module 5. That continues on in module 6. In module 6 we have to in module 5 we first have to understand the basic mechanisms through which all of these things are occurring. So essentially here, so what happens is, a normal body cells will have 46 chromosomes. However, the gametes will have only 23 chromosomes each, so they are called the haploid number. The 46 chromosomes is the diploid number, so just think diploid like die. So that way it is like it's double of 23, so 46. So 46 chromosomes in your normal body cells, and then 23 chromosomes in your sex cells. And the reason why you've got 23 chromosomes is the reason why we have 23 chromosomes after meiosis is because after meiosis, when the gametes fuse, you get 23 chromosomes from your mum, and then you get the other half from your dad. And with that though, so you essentially get that. Now so like we said, each gamete contains half the necessary number of chromosomes. The male gamete is the sperm, which fertilizes the female gamete, which is the ovum or the egg. And that can happen either via internal fertilization or external fertilization. Now, the fusion of a gamete, the fusion of gametes results in zygote, right? So the zygote contains a combination of genetic material from both parents. So I definitely recommend jotting some of these keywords down. Meiosis, haploid number of chromosomes, which is 23, diploid number of chromosomes, which is 46, gametes, the male gamete, sperm, the female gamete, ovum, internal, external fertilization, and fusion of gametes results in a zygote. So definitely jot down these some of these keywords and main points so that you can jog your memory when you're looking at these notes later on. So now let's have a look at what is the difference between internal and external fertilization. Internal fertilization, so let's start with external. External fertilizations, the cells, so the gametes, are uniting outside the female body. So the sperm cells will unite with the egg cells outside the female body. There will be environmental cues and body chemicals such as pheromones, which ensure that the sperm and the eggs are released at the same time, and they're released in close proximity. And this is a characteristic of aquatic animals, because you need an aquatic environment for this to happen. So animals such as coral, hydra, fish, amphibians, including frogs and toads, they utilize this method of external fertilization. And there are a large number of gametes, or of eggs rather, that are produced, that are sort of sent out into the environment, but the survival rate is very low. And you can consider why, it's going to be very low. It's because it's outside in this unpredictable environment, and it is easily can fall prey to predators. It may not. Yeah, that's the biggest one, is the fact that it can get eaten up, so it can fall prey to predators. It also may not get the nutrients it actually needs to survive if the conditions are not optimal as well. So the zygote's massive, so it's huge. The advantage here is that there's no parental energy that needs to be expanded, like that no parental care is needed, and the number of gametes that are secreted out into the environment is very high. So it kind of depends on that probability notion, in a way, where it's like hopefully they will mate, like the gametes will find each other and they'll mate, and it does happen. It obviously works for aquatic animals, but it's just very it's not a very, what's the word, like the survival rates are pretty low, and it's not the most optimal way as well, but it works obviously. So then we've got internal fertilization. So internal fertilization also has its advantages and disadvantages. All these processes have their advantages and disadvantages. So internal fertilization, as the name suggests, the sperm is deposited inside or near the reproductive tract, and the union takes place within the female body, and it requires complementary mating behavior and reproductive organs between the two sexes. Now, these are characteristics of some amphibians like salamanders, reptiles, birds, and mammals, higher vertebrates. So the main difference here is that you need a small number of eggs, but the survival rate is pretty high in comparison to external fertilization. And you also need fewer zygotes, because there are also fewer zygotes. Like, it's only, obviously, unless you consider the situation of twins or triplets or like quadruplets, it's like one egg is fertilized at a time, and then after that, essentially the body has all these different mechanisms in place that ensures that after fertilization has occurred, the sperm can't sort of come through and fertilize another egg. So that's really important. So it's fewer zygotes, but obviously parental care is needed, and there are low number of gametes as well. So that is the main distinction between internal and external fertilization. Any questions so far? And if they are, please send them through to the chat. So let us move on then. Look at us go. Let's now have a look at reproduction in plants. So in reproduction in plants, we have to look at sexual versus asexual reproduction, and we have to draw some comparisons. So sexual reproduction, flowers are the reproductive organs of most sexually reproducing plants, so they are the reproductive organs, and the offspring is again produced by the fusion of two gametes. That's how reproduction works, right? That's how sexual reproduction works. And the male gamete, the pollen, is the pollen are produced and transferred to female ovules, and that is pollination. So the process here, fertilization occurs through pollination, and then fertilization occurs after pollination has happened, and the ovules grow into seeds inside a fruit, and that is the result of sexual reproduction. Now, asexual reproduction, on the other hand, is when we are actually modifying parts of the plant, like we're taking its stem or its root, and we're just putting it out, and we're just growing it out again, and then that will lead to the production of new individual without the actual need for seeds or plants. So think about if you've ever tried to like grow a fruit in your backyard or something. I know when I was little, I think I'd like tried to do that with like a mango seed so many times, because I loved mangoes, and I was like, I just hope they grow out of somewhere in my garden. I'd love to eat mangoes every day. Obviously it didn't work because I didn't water it at all. I just left it in there, but definitely tried. So that's asexual reproduction. So let's have a look then at the advantages and disadvantages. Now you would already know some of these. The one of the key concepts that you learn in year 11 is the concept of variation, of diversity, and biodiversity, and that is something that you definitely want to um, bring with you into year 12, especially for module 5 and for module 6, more so than module 7 and 8, definitely the first two. So let's have a look. Now with sexual reproduction there are lots of advantages. The first one is variation in population. That's always the advantage of sexual reproduction. Then the fact that species are better able to adapt to their environment, and obviously if they're better able to adapt, then that sort of aids with the whole natural selection process as well, and survival of the fittest, and disease events are less likely to affect the entire population. So this essentially links to all three. But yeah, if there is variation in the population, disease is less likely to affect the whole population, and as a result cause danger to the survival of the whole population. And you look at this in module 6 a bit more when we look at genetically modified crops, and we look at how these genetically modified crops, they essentially, the way in which they work is that genetically modified crops, they generally monocultures are really popular when it comes to GMs, and a good example of that is, for example, the Cavendish bananas. So the Cavendish bananas are all of the same species, all of the same species, and what happens is that with Cavendish bananas, before they fell prey, like the earliest species of these bananas fell prey to a rust pathogen fungal disease called the Panama disease, and as a result it affected banana populations around the world. And so then they engineered a banana with genes, they changed its genes so that it was resistant to that specific pathogen, but now you've got around the world mostly the same species of banana, so there's no genetic diversity. And so then as a result it has now fallen prey to another pathogen, and it's already started destroying a lot of crops, but there's not much you can do because they're all the same, so there's no ability to fight off disease in those bananas, in those fruits. So that's why sexual reproduction is advantageous, because of that diversity that comes naturally. The disadvantages are definitely it takes a large time and energy investment. It requires a mating partner, and fewer offsprings are produced. Asexual reproduction, on the other hand, it leads to the rapid population of an environment. There is no requirement for mates, and it's able to be enacted under external pressures. For example, it's quick and it's not energy intensive, and there is no requirement for investment in the care of offspring. Disadvantages are the lack of diversity. It's a huge one. It can result in large-scale extinction events, and it has led to the reduced ability of the organism to actually adapt to external pressures. So that's the main advantages and disadvantages, and I definitely recommend that you jot these down, because these are the really important part of the syllabus. So let's now have a look at what other organisms do. So we've got bacteria. Bacteria reproduce by binary fission. So essentially what they do is that they reproduce by binary fission, so they just divide into two. So here is the process. Okay, so here's the process. You've got the cell, that's the chromosome, the chromosomes in the nucleus, that's the cytoplasm. And so we can see that the nucleus starts to divide. So it starts to divide, DNA replication happens, and then it continues to happen, and then we get to see a process called cytokinesis. So essentially, the cytoplasmic wall breaks apart and it sort of forms like two layers, and slowly you end up with two identical daughter cells. That's the whole process. Fungi can reproduce sexually via meiosis, or they can also reproduce asexually via processes such as fragmentation, where they leave their spores, where like the spores travel through the air, and budding as well. And this is budding. So budding is when you've got the mushroom there, or the mushroom there. A part of it sort of comes out, and it sort of attaches, and it attaches until it sort of falls off and becomes its own part, and that's budding right there. Okay, and finally, protists, they reproduce sexually via meiosis, or they can also reproduce asexually via both binary fission and budding. So you have to know the main processes for all of them.